It's time for the Voice of Reason podcast. Here are your hosts, Shawn Phillips, Andy Van Beber, and Travis Kirkendall.
And ladies and gentlemen, we are with you today, whatever day it is that you decide to listen to this show, whether it's in 1 day, 5 days, or 5 years. This is the Voice of Reason podcast. As always, my name is Shawn Phillips, and today we are joined by my two co-hosts, Mr. Andy Van Beber, Travis Kirkendall, and our good friend of the show, reoccurring guest, Mr. Shawn Yates. Gentlemen, how are the three of you doing today?
Hey, great. You know, last time we had Shawn on, I should have done a split window or something with the baby face, with nothing on that's going on 2 years ago. So, I mean, still, and by the way, might I add, our highest rated show ever, most watched episode was with the last episode with Shawn Yates on. So we can only hope for more good things. If I just tag the episode with Shawn Yates, 5 million viewers, right there. So it's good to have you on, Shawn.
It's always nice when he shares it to his OnlyFans. It gets our viewers up pretty good. So we appreciate it.
Yes, yeah.
Well, I appreciate the invite. Thank you. I did not know that. But yeah, we'll put it on the OnlyFans free subscription this month. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, thank you for inviting me back.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about where you're at, what's going on now, Shawn. What you're up to, where you're at in your schooling and everything.
Yeah, so just last Thursday, I came back to WashU, moved back down here. I'm in my apartment right now, trying to stay warm. But this is my last semester of undergrad. I'm going to finish my anthropology and pre-med degree, and then I'll be applying to either med schools or physician assistant schools this coming spring around May, June-ish. And so, yeah, that'll be the next step in like my career path, I guess, and just right now. Also finished football last fall, so
yeah,
that's another chapter that's closed.
And you guys,
that was a fun time.
And we're going to talk a little football and a little bit of medicine stuff tonight. But your football, you guys had a pretty good last season. You guys only had what, 3 losses?
Yeah, we ended up 7-3.
I guess first thing I want to hit on tonight. Travis is going to be strangely silent, I know, on this one, but what were your guys' thoughts from football over the weekend?
Sorry, I'm not the football guy.
Yeah. What were your guys' thoughts from football over the weekend? Either Shawn would be.
That game was crazy. Just the fan bases. Well, that and the Buffalo fan base for even making a game possible tonight.
Yeah.
That was just crazy to see.
I saw them. They were paying them What were they paying them $20 an hour out there up there in Buffalo to shovel out, and they said they had up to 3 foot in the stadium, 3 foot drifts in parts of the stadium. And then I was really surprised with the Texans game. That was of course I enjoy C.J. Stroud. I think he's a really good player. Of course, I've said that on the show before. I think that he's going to be something special. But how about them Cowboys?
You upset that everybody predicted.
Well, what do you think about that, Shawn?
Oh, I loved it. It was everything that I needed.
Well, yeah, you're the resident. I was texting Shawn last night, and I said, this may be the only time that I'm cheering. I mean, I dislike the Packers, but with every inch of my being, I despise the Cowboys. With everything with who I am, I loved seeing it there. I forgot which score it was. It was either the second or the third score, and they did the shot up to the suite boxes, and Jerry Jones is just doing one of these where he's looking around. He's like trying to find somebody, like a member of the coaching staff is going to be up there in the box or something, giving him an answer as to why his team just blows. So, but yeah, and then I have to say, let Red Nation, let's go Chiefs. Even though I thought that I know that Shawn was sitting there, probably could have had more pleasure with a corn cob being thrusted up his hindquarters. But I mean, I'm nothing from you, Mr. Phillips, nothing at all.
No, you're gonna get as much of me as you got out of the Dolphins offense.
Oh.
I I don't hate many things. The Chiefs are one of them. So unfortunately, that was the one good thing about living in California for almost 2 years is I didn't have to listen to any of the noise of the Chiefs.
That's a bitter man right there, boys. That's
playing
a bitter
well.
man.
Yeah. But you know what? Such is life.
Yeah.
They run into their kryptonite tomorrow or next week.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
hopefully Josh Allen and the boys get it done.
I am a realist. I am a realist. I know what's going to happen next week, and so. But we'll be back to reality next week. But one other thing I want to ask, and I put this on the group chat, and I didn't. This was the first year, and it's a frightening trend. It doesn't matter what team you're a fan of, but so this was the first that a playoff game was done strictly on a streaming service that had to be paid for. The Chiefs and Dolphins game was on Peacock, and there was a lot of negative kickback. Now, in the Kansas City and the Miami markets, you could pick it up on the local over-the-air antennas.
Correct.
But just from the onset, what's your guys's, and I mean, pay-per-view, I mean, I guess you could call this, pay-per-view football. I mean, you guys have done pay-per-view events for we talk about boxing and wrestling stuff all the time and MMA stuff, but now, is this something that you think is going to be sustainable or should be done in football?
It's tough. I think it depends on the league. The NFL is rather large, and they'll take the highest bidder, any day of the week over if they think that, I don't want to know what NBC shelled out for it. But I guarantee you that if they made it a streaming exclusive, they probably earned similar revenue that they would have earned during the Super Bowl. Just because that's how it works. So I don't know. I don't mind it, but at the end of the day, I know a lot of other people did have a problem with it, but it didn't mean much for me.
It didn't. Well, what I had read this morning in this morning's news brief was that was and this is, I'm having a hard time agreeing with this, but they said that was the highest viewed stream sporting event. Does that seem right? I don't know. We've talked about some huge.
Yeah, it was something like 24 million viewers or something like that in that ballpark.
Well, I'm not. I don't know. We've had conversation before where we've talked about how, when what's the typical? What is it like? $50, $60 for an MMA fight to watch one of those.
No, you're talking north, I don't know, 75. What's the UFC now, Sean? Like 75 or 90? Like it depends on the main event, I guess.
It depends on the main event, but
I think when the last one I paid for was oh my God, over a year ago, and it was like 75 I paid.
Yeah, with the streaming service.
Then I started streaming it.
Yeah, with the streaming service, I I get a lot of the stuff for, I know for all like the WWE stuff, I get all that stuff that's included with what I stream, and then there's a lot of other MMA fights and stuff I get on different channels. So I don't have to, but I had access. The only way I was able to watch the game the other night was because I had access to the local Kansas City affiliate. So, and that's how I was able to watch the game. So, but anyway, I I think that it's what we're going to see is, and there were a lot of disgruntled people because there was a opinion piece in, I forgot what newspaper it was. It was out of South Carolina, Charleston Post. It was Charleston News, the Charleston, South Carolina newspaper, and they made this long editorial about how, I mean, it's basically, you know you've already got, it's already impossible if you want to go watch a football game. You know, you have, if it's really if you have a prime market like Kansas City. I went to a Kansas City Chiefs game 3 years ago, and I paid for me, my son, and my brother and myself $240, and that was 80. That was one row below the top, and that was 3 years ago. Now those same seats are going for $300, and if you want to get down into the lower tier, I mean, you might as well $1,500, $2,000. So, I mean,
You want to know what's a real shame? Like one of the biggest disappointments for me of this year was when the XFL launched, the season that it was canceled. I bought my season tickets at the 50-yard line,
oh,
second section back. I paid $100 per ticket for 5 games, so $20 a game. I have looked at season tickets for this upcoming season, and they're in the $400
are you serious?
mark. And
Because this new
there's no need for that though. I mean, even the like nosebleeds, like, and this is for minor league football essentially.
Mhm.
Um, and I get it, everything is getting more expensive, but it sucks when things get priced out, when you get priced out of things. But so for example, there's 300 baseball games a year in St. Louis, for the Cardinals, just because that's how Major League Baseball is. Pretty easy to get access to all Cardinals baseball games. Now, the NHL and ESPN had a deal where they've made all NHL games available on ESPN. I can watch any single NHL game on ESPN Plus that I want, except for the Blues. Why? Because that's the local channel. However, it's not actually local because the Blues have a deal with Bally's and Fox Sports Midwest, so you still have to have DirecTV to watch Blues games. So unless you have DirecTV, you can't watch NHL hockey. So, but Apple, in my opinion, has the best deal
Yes, they do.
for sports. Their season ticket for MLS is the best deal that you can get for all you. I paid $50 and I was able to watch every single game. No local blackouts. Every single game. The best deal. And Apple paid, $1 billion for that. Call me crazy. I would gladly pay, for the NFL this year, I got the student discount for a Sunday ticket. So I paid $90 for every football game except for local channels, which again is annoying because sometimes you're not around a TV. But if Apple paid the NFL $50 billion and charged me $100 to watch for the season, as long as I got every game,
Yeah.
I'll do it every year.
Well,
I know not everyone's like that, but I would do it every single year.
did you see the commercials then? Did you see the commercials for like the last 3 weeks of the season? It was like, oh, get this the last 3 weeks of the NFL on on YouTube for, it was like $75, $65. I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, and you still don't get the local games.
And
Like,
you
you
still
don't
don't,
get the local
right? You
games
still
in
get
market.
local blackouts. I mean,
Yeah, one of the better deals. Now it sucks because it only works on your phone or your tablet. But if you use the NFL Fantasy app, you can pay for NFL Plus, which I got for $20 for the season, which allows you to watch any local game on your smart device. So basically, that was how I counterbalanced it. If it wasn't on YouTube TV, I'd be able to watch the game on my phone through NFL Plus,
And
which for me, in total, I paid $100 for all the games this year, and as a pretty big NFL fan, it was worth it for me. But I would much rather it just be there's one spot, there's no blackout games. I don't care if it's Prime, I don't care if it's Apple. If they were all in one spot, it'd be a big convenience thing for me.
And I want to ask you something, Shawn Yates, on this. From a collegiate athlete, do you see the same thing? I mean, now with I know you're D3, but with D1 athletes now being able to do all the money that they're going to be able to come into now, are we going to see the same? Do you think we'll see the same thing happen on the college level as far as prices and availability and that kind of thing? I mean, is that something you think we're going to be trending more towards?
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%, because you're going to start getting these college institutions involved with deals and stuff, and NIL deals are becoming more and more part of the recruiting process. Just because the name of the university is paramount for college athletes, especially when you get to D1 level. I feel like, I don't know, there's going to be a time where SEC football is going to be going to cost crazy amounts of money just because they're going to have to start paying for these players to come play SEC football. It's going to literally come down to the players wanting to go to the school that they believe they can get a brand built around them at that school.
So what they can explain a little bit of this, and I'm still a little bit in the dark on how a lot of this works. So college players, and this is something that the NCAA is. I mean, this has been a Pandora's box that they've been dealing with for years now about paying the players. So is there any cap on how much D1 players can make, or is there limits of any kind, or how does that even? What are the rules for that?
As far as I know, and it could vary between D3 all the way up to D1, but from our meetings that we had as D3 athletes, because NIL does apply to us since we're still NCAA affiliated. Basically, NIL, name, image, likeness, we're able to use all of that as kind of our own, and we can market ourselves as almost like a brand, whether that can be you doing deals with your local pizza shop, per se, or putting on camps that are advertised using yourself to bring students, and you get paid from that. Whatever it may be, you kind of just have to report to the institution what you're doing, because obviously there's some things that they don't want you being advertised to promote or whatever. But as far as I know, there's really no cap, because I know there are some very prominent social media athletes that are making in the millions. Yeah. Wow. So there's some restrictions in terms of what you can do, but for the most part, it's pretty open.
And so, is there any? I mean, how does that? So the university, the school then will not get any part of that then, correct? The NIL money.
Well, yeah, because the way that I understand it is the school itself cannot pay a student to come to that school. However, a booster, let's say, for example, like this is why people are like afraid of places like Miami getting really good soon, USC, some of these bigger schools and these bigger locations where like Caleb Williams, for example, was making millions in sponsorship deals. So let's say a player is on the edge between Michigan and Alabama next year. Well, boosters in that city can come together and say, hey, we have this company, this company, this company, this company that, would love to sponsor you. Here's $6 million a year to come play for this school. And
so you can take booster money.
Like Caleb Williams, part of his deal was he was given like a $400,000 Mercedes like C-Class. Like he got like some badass whip from some like just local LA car dealership, gave him some $500,000 car as like a welcome to USC.
Yeah, I'm glad you clarified that, Shawn, because that's kind of what I was talking about as these institutions, not just the college itself. That's what I didn't really mean, but the whole area. It's going to be a money grab, just trying to get the best players to come to these universities that these companies are supporting. So
don't you think that takes away from the integrity of the game, though, of what college athletics are supposed to be about?
It is very difficult because as the fan of the sport, I would say yes. But as the student athlete myself, I would say there's definitely a case to be made that this should have been happening a long time ago, considering how much money these student athletes are making for these schools.
My argument will always be Johnny Manziel. Johnny Manziel made Texas A&M over $1 billion, and he didn't see a penny of it. Did it, translate to a first round draft pick where, he went to the Browns and shit the bed? Maybe, but his jersey was the number one selling jersey in the nation. I mean, generated over $1 billion in revenue for Texas A&M, and he wasn't able to make any money. That part to me is why things like this have to happen. Is you have players and students that change the face of a university, and maybe they get, free protein when they go to the gym, and they don't really have to do shit in class. But at the end of the day, you have a lot of students that barely scraped by. Their parents are getting evicted from their homes, but it's like, these are college kids that are generating millions and millions for these institutions, and they weren't seeing a dime. So it's tough because now we have things like the transfer portal, and as a fan, it makes it a little bit more whatever. But from the student athlete standpoint, I totally get it. And at the end of the day, give Reggie Bush's Heisman back. It's bullshit.
Yeah. I think that that's a real good point because of all that came up about what happened with Reggie Bush while he was at USC. Yeah, definitely give that man. It's like Pete Rose for football almost. But I hated seeing what the transfer portal did to this year's bowl season because I thought it was, Mizzou was going to have a Mizzou Ohio game, which is just an example, and I'm not a huge Mizzou fan. I like watching Mizzou football, but I think that would have been a much different game had a lot of those guys not just transferred out right before, but trying to understand how the whole transfer. I think it was you, Shawn Yates, who I don't know, it was you or who it was that. Or maybe somebody else. I think it was my boss who I was talking to about this, was how this whole thing works. They have so many different windows that they can go in and go through and transfer. And I think that I don't know. To me, I like college sports because there wasn't that, it was just, you knew what you were getting with just the plain athlete, with the straight athlete. But at the same time, I can see the other side of what you said with the student athlete, Shawn, was just how these universities making billions of dollars and then the athletes seeing none of it. I think that's crap too. So this is something that's going to continue to develop, and I hope it doesn't turn into a three-headed monster that is going to be something that will, it hasn't translated. I don't think it's translated over into ticket prices yet. Of course, I haven't been to a Mizzou game in years, so I don't know how it translates over to ticket prices or anything like that, but I hope it doesn't. So, but anyway, so moving on with what we're getting into next. Another reason why we have Shawn on, if you haven't been following the news or anything like that, over the last week, our friends from the NIE. Were Dr. Fauci and Dr. Anthony Fauci. And I was trying to think of this guy Collins. He was the head of the NIH. I'm sorry, the NIH, the National Institute of Health. Francis Collins. Both went before Congress over the last week and discussed. It's kind of we've had time to gain our collective breath, and now we're starting to look back on how COVID was handled, what could have been done differently, what was done wrong, how did this get out of hand in the first place? And so this is basically an oversight committee in Congress. I don't know which exact committee it was, but Dr. Francis Collins appeared before this committee on Monday. On Friday, and he did a 7-hour interview with this committee, the House Select Committee on the Coronavirus Pandemic. And when this came out, how did the coronavirus, how did it start? And originally, when people said, well, there was a leak, or there was cross-contamination at the Wuhan province lab, that was immediately that was one of those things that got you banned off Facebook if you started pushing that narrative too hard. But according to this report, it said Dr. Collins agreed with Dr. Fauci's concession that the COVID-19 lab leak hypothesis is not a conspiracy. Okay. And so these congressmen, now it's kind of this pointing of fingers thing of how this all came down. And we talked. This has been a long time ago since we've talked about this, but this Wuhan lab was part of what they call gain of function research. Shawn, do you know much about what this gain of function research is, or how this works, or what can you explain to us about this?
As far as I know, gain of function research is kind of like taking microorganisms, or in this case, a virus. So not really an organism, but something really small, micro, and kind of just engineering it. So, in another word, man-made, to make it have desirable functions or different traits about it. I guess if you really wanted to tamper with the virus in this sense, if you were to gain a function with the virus, you could either make it weaker or you can make it stronger by affecting how it would penetrate a cell. So just kind of changing how it functions.
And so they're wanting to see how the cell will react to it, the ultimate goal is to create a vaccine for said virus, right?
Yes, but the as far as I know, with the lab leak hypotheses or claims, the change in function or research like that in this sense would be kind of making the virus more capable to like enter a host, or it could be the reverse. Either way, but that's like I don't really know what they were doing. I mean, I guess we don't really know what they're doing in that lab, but it could really be for different reasons because sometimes viruses are used in a positive sense as well. So
And
it could have been for any reason.
and to kind of get to where another reason why we had you on that, and we've been talking about this when we get closer to it's hard to believe that we're going to be coming up on the 5-year anniversary of this before long. Shawn has done. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the research it's not necessarily about the virus per se, but tell us a little bit about like what you did before we came on the air tonight. Tell us a little bit about what your past research has been about and kind of what you've been doing.
Yeah, so I was in anthropology, medicine, and society class, more specifically the history of medicine. And kind of the last prompt for the class for the final paper was very open ended. It was kind of just a self directed research opportunity. So I wanted to bring a rural perspective from the pandemic that not a lot of people have experienced or heard about here at WashU because the rural community here is very limited. So I wanted to bring a unique perspective into my class. So I kind of took a paper idea where I would just interview a couple people from Pike County or that are familiar with the area, such as yourself and V. And I also researched some newspaper articles, some statistics from the time around 2020 when the COVID pandemic really started kicking off, and just kind of see what were the motivations behind the reactions to COVID mandates, masking, restrictions, closures, all that stuff. I wanted to see kind of what were the motivations behind the very resistant reactions towards those mandates in Pike County, because I know here in the urban area, a lot of people would be like, why would you ever not want to wear a mask, or why would you not get vaccinated? But there are very valid reasons, I feel like, for rural people to feel opposite. And I wanted to figure out why why they had those feelings. So what I figured out through, or at least what I inferred through my interviews and my research, was Pike County was a case where individual agendas and biases and lifestyles kind of coalesced into these views of like resistance and autonomy, where people really wanted to protect rural or local authority that they believed was being threatened by this federal government hand that was kind of coming out of nowhere, breaching on their lifestyles that they hadn't really experienced before the COVID pandemic. So it was really interesting seeing how it wasn't really just a state of ignorance and lack of care about their health. It was more so wanting to protect that local authority and just not really having experienced the federal government power to that extent before. Yeah.
Do you think that this is based upon what you've seen? I mean, do you moving forward? How would you think, based upon what you studied in rural areas? I mean, do you think the government, if we have an, God forbid, we have something like this, I mean, come again, but I mean, do you think the government would try, or how well do you think it would be received if they start this sheltering in place, wearing your mask, 6 feet? How well did, from what you saw, how well did that? How effective was that overall?
You saying if it would happen again,
Yeah, I mean,
would it be a little different?
would they do that again? Do you think that would be something that would be pushed, or was it? What do you think?
Um, it really depends on what the outbreak is and the nature of it, because I feel like if we have another very contagious pathogen come out again, I feel like at least until further data comes out, the very same restrictions are going to roll around. We're going to have accelerated vaccines. But in a rural area, I feel like the response is going to be very similar just because, I mean, reality is contagious pathogens aren't going to be experienced as crazily in rural areas as they will in urban areas. And I feel like until they're experienced or manifested in reality for these people in rural areas, it's just going to be very hard to motivate them to want to change their lifestyles because a lot of them won't see the need to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Shawn Phillips, you were when did you were going out? When did you moved to L.A. towards the tail end? Right? Was that when you were out there when you moved to L.A.? Was that
Correct.
what kind of
Correct.
what did you experience when you were out there towards the tail end of it? What kind
So
of thing?
towards the tail end, the big thing that I kind of experienced was there were still a few places that were very strict on you had to have a vaccine card to be there to go do things. It wasn't all the places, it was just some select ones. What was funny was actually the big thing that was going on by the time I moved there was a lot of local establishments like restaurants had been given certain permits for outdoor seating, and they loved it. It was great for their business. And the government was trying to take those away, say, no, you have to go back to indoors. And they were getting pushback from all the restaurants that were like, absolutely not. Like, outdoor seating saved our business. We're doing better than we ever have, because it was able to expand capacity because people were able to eat inside again and they were able to eat outside. So that was actually what was funny is they realized then, all these businesses, all these people in LA were super happy that, oh, our government's taking care of us. We're getting stimulus checks. We're getting all this stuff. And then when the government came back in to take away some of those things, that's when people were getting upset again. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of funny.
Travis, where were you at, Travis, in the during
yeah. So when it all started, I was still up in Alaska in the Army. So it was pretty strict for us because we're federal working for the government. So I was always wearing a mask and they're always yelling, 6 feet, whatnot. Even in like the city of Anchorage, I mean, they were taking it pretty serious. And then I came down to Chicago. I got here at the end of September, right before my birthday. And it was just as strict as I saw it up in Anchorage. Anchorage took it pretty serious. But yeah, we started to see, obviously, I ended up getting the vaccine. I had to get the vaccine card to do certain things. I had to show the card to go to certain restaurants. Definitely took it super serious up here. But it was funny because, I had to wear a mask to go into stores here. But you go back home Pike County, it's like I'm not wearing a fucking mask around here. Like, mm-hmm. I'm in freedom world, Like, it's just not. It's cool, They don't care about here. So it was funny to see that difference, and it's interesting that it's cool to see Shawn wrote a paper on it because I always kind of wondered like I think I kind of knew what the sentiment was, and it kind of echoes what he found, but it's cool to see someone do a study like that.
Well, and my whole thing, and when I talked with Shawn about this at length, one of the things that I think that we saw around here, and we still continue to see, that it's not a one-size-fits-all. When you approach something like this, it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. What's going to work in LA or what's going to work in Anchorage or what's going to work in St. Louis is not going to work in Pike County. And people, I think we get a lot of, we've seen a lot of growth in our school district this year, and a lot of it is people coming up out of the city, people who can afford to come up out of the city and move to the country because they want. When you talk to some people about, what are you trying to get away from, and I mean, a lot of it is just that the grip that people felt, especially during COVID.
Oh yeah, look at the amount of people that left the big cities. I mean, the suburbs here in Chicago, even since I've been here, is just insane. How many people have moved out of the city? Just insane in our area alone. I know it's been like that in other cities too.
And Shawn Yates, you graduated. I still remember your graduation ceremony, and we had to issue tickets. Right, it was tickets to the graduation. What did we have there? It was like 100. We usually have close to like 500, people who are usually more than that who come to graduation. And I think they limited it to like 125 people, and all the rows were spaced out, and all this garbage, and you know,
Yep.
what do you? So I mean, so basically overall, and you kind of touched on this a little bit already. But what is it? Was this trend common in other areas? Do you think, or what, as far as local secluded areas, was this a common trend, or did you see anything that pointed to that?
In my opinion, I think it would be very easily to observe in other rural areas. One, because I talked a lot about the Pike County Fair, and
Oh yeah, tell some tell. Please share that stat. I was reading your paper the other day. Please share that stat.
oh yeah, let me see. I have the paper pulled up right now. I think before the fair, Pike County had about 65 COVID cases and one COVID death. But after the fair, I think it was within 2 days, five people already tested positive, and who knows how many people went untested. And like I said, after 2 days, there's still more that could have got tested right after and would have tested positive. But it was interesting seeing how thousands of people went to the fair. And bringing that up, this is why I feel like it went to other rural areas as well, this sentiment, because you saw people coming from Illinois to Pike
Mm-hmm.
County Fair that had been coming from areas where things did close. And so I felt like the sentiment was nationwide. If you have people traveling this far to an event, just because their areas had closed things off, they were like, well, forget that. I'm still going to go have my fun. I'll just do it wherever I can do it. So I'm going to go to Pike County because it's close enough to this fair. So I feel like, I don't know, I can infer that this would have been observed in other rural areas as well.
Does it, the overall, what was the total? I don't even know what the total death count was, U.S. wide or worldwide or whatever it was on with COVID deaths. With that, I mean, in comparison to, I guess I could Google that, but compared to what we've seen in the past, we've talked about this before, and I think if I remember correctly, I read this. Maybe it wasn't in your paper. I read somewhere else. But when we've had swine flu and we've had the Ebola and we've had all of these different, and recently here they tried the whole monkeypox thing and all that other jazz. I mean, do you think after your interviews, do you think was that an attempt by? Did locals see that as an attempt by the government to try to maintain control, or were they going to be? I mean, what did they see? What did they see as the intent of what the government was trying to do?
With all the mandates,
Yeah.
yeah, I believe that people thought that the government was just trying to exert, I don't know, any kind of control, which is the definition of a mandate. So it's very fair to have that uh, sentiment about it, but it's very difficult because, like I said earlier, there's a lot of individual biases that creeped into it, and so I felt some local authority might have even felt threatened by federal authority coming in and almost felt like, okay, this is a way of them, undermining what I would do in this situation. Why are they enforcing all these mandates? Let me, tell the people it's all good. Don't follow this. But community members, it's very hard to tell what they were thinking in terms of the federal government at that point. I just think the federal government was never really, it was real because of the media, but it wasn't real in terms of like a physical sense. Like it wasn't going to affect them right in their daily lives in their face like that to a degree that this did. So I don't know. I just feel like it was kind of infringing on what they believed was their rights that they had already been living throughout their whole lives in a way that they had never experienced before.
Well, and I think that and the whole when you look back on how people nationwide reacted about this, and I'm Sean Phillips and I had this conversation because he and we will share clips and stuff from the Pat McAfee show, but and this has been coming up here lately again because of Aaron Rodgers. I mean, Sean, what was the whole thing with what was it with Aaron Rodgers? How was he treating? What was his treatment for COVID? Sean Phillips.
So he did.
It was ayahuasca, wasn't it?
Yeah, basically. No, he had done. So originally, he had a consultant, I believe. Like he had went and visited with several doctors and was advised because of a pre-existing condition he had against getting the vaccine.
That's right.
So he had done. It was basically, what some people would just call some witch medicine, but essentially, it was basically some recommendations from his doctors. Again, people that have PhDs, like legit doctors, not just someone off the reservation. This was like a legit doctors that said, hey, here are some things that people are doing to help strengthen themselves to not prevent COVID, but to be prepared for in the event that you were to get COVID. So he did that, ended up getting COVID, and then went ahead and did the monoclonal antibodies. And was COVID free within, 2 or 3 days, and didn't show any signs of, long COVID, things like that. So basically did what everyone said was, fake medicine, fake news, kind of nonsense from the,
well, that was
left side of the medical field. And it ended up, he was just fine and won an MVP.
Well, yeah. And Shawn Yates, you might. I mean, I had taken the monoclonal antibodies as well. Why wasn't that something that? I mean, do you know any reason as to why that wasn't pushed more? Or I mean, I guess it wasn't FDA approved or whatever. I mean, have you? Do you guys? Any of you guys? Did anybody know of anybody who, other than myself? I mean, who took those or who used those or what? Or was there something against that just wasn't that popular?
I actually have no idea why it wasn't pushed more. I'm not sure if there was any reasons behind, like maybe it's not as effective as people think. In terms of rural areas, I feel like it wasn't pushed more just because of what people have available. I mean, well, local healthcare centers have available.
That was kind of what I was wondering. I mean, so when I was diagnosed I started feeling bad on Sunday, got tested on Monday and got positive, and they're like, okay, when did you first start feeling your symptoms? And I said, well, it was yesterday. And they said, okay, we want you to go to the Louisiana Hospital, Pike County Memorial, and get the monoclonal antibodies, which, by the way, totally 100% free. I didn't have to pay a dime for. My insurance wasn't charged anything. And all I had to do was sign off on a waiver, and I was right as rain within 8 hours. And that was what totally blew me away, But one other thing I wanted to push at, and I want to get back to Travis. Travis, how much was, so you said at the beginning you were still in the military. How much of it, was it just the military guys following orders, or did you notice your superiors? I mean, were they kind of just groaning as they did this or as they pushed this, or was this something that they were really serious about?
For the most part, it was kind of groaning, like, this don't really agree with this, but hey, it's the Army, we got to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That sentiment towards the end kind of started to change a little bit, and some guys kind of like bought into it more, like, hey, no, we got to take care of our soldiers. Like, 'cause it was getting to the point where, like, by the time I was leaving, like, yeah, our barracks were just everyone was getting COVID in the barracks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you tell like 400 or 500 people to stay in one single building and don't leave for 2 weeks if someone gets sick or something. Like, it's just a recipe for disaster. No one's going to stay in their room. They're all sitting there drinking and partying and hanging out together. It was doomed from the beginning. But yeah, it definitely started to get that way. I will say, like, I got out before like the vaccine started to become like a mandate for military members, because that was something that was coming right before I got out. And I know some guys by then they were already kind of. I don't. When did the vaccine first come out? Do we remember?
Was it?
Do you remember what month it was? I will say there was definitely a lot of mixed feelings about it. Right as I was getting out.
I want to say it was that. Was it mid to late summer or no? It was like.
It was relatively early.
I don't have my wallet on me. I still have my
prototype was like.
I still have my COVID card somewhere. I kept that.
I want to say it started rolling out in December of 2020.
Yeah.
And then
so it was late. So yeah. Because I think
So I mean, there was rumors of like it was going to come out, and there was already kind of mixed feelings about because of COVID. There was already conspiracy theories rolling out about it at the time. So, yeah, I'm glad I got out when I did.
Was that something?
I mean, I still ended up getting vaccinated, but
Shawn, was that something else that you discovered through your research? I mean, did a lot of people was that conspiracy theory factor there for the whole vaccine thing? Was that something that was kind of within the rural area? Was that something that was more prevalent in the rural area?
Yeah, I wish I would have extended my paper a little bit longer because I kind of just covered that summer of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
But I know from my own personal experiences being in the area when the vaccine was rolling out that, yeah, it was kind of similar reasonings as to why they didn't want to wear masks or didn't want to social distance. The same reasons were being applied to why they didn't want to get vaccinated. Also, another big reason is just the speed with which the vaccine came out. So it was very similar reasons there.
Well, and I think some people really. I had a unique opportunity, and I'll share this. I don't know if I've ever shared this with you guys or not, but it was during. So when we were shut down from school, and I got to the point where I was just bored off my can too, and I started offering. And Uber and Lyft at the time were the messages we were getting from Uber and Lyft were do it at your own risk kind of thing, and so I basically just started to freelance, and I would put flyers up at the hospital and our local hotel there in Pittsfield, and we actually had 3 hotels there in Pittsfield. I had flyers up, and I was giving quite a few rides, and then I got on to Illini Health, which is there in Pittsfield, the hospital in Pittsfield, and Pike County Sheriff's. Whenever somebody like had an accident or somebody was needing to ride home, I would get phone calls. So I had actually gotten this one phone call from Pike County Sheriff's. It was a woman who had worked for who was the first one to come out with a vaccine? That was
Pfizer.
Pfizer. Yeah, so she was what they called an auditor for Pfizer. And she was a scientist, and part of these auditors' job was after all the research had been done, and they were basically looking over the researchers' shoulders and all, and their job was basically to double check the findings and to do all of this other stuff. And then the way a drug usually works is and I learned a lot from her. She said, we do all of our trials, we do our research, and then I audit that, and then we send it to the FDA. So to speed the whole thing up, and Shawn Yates was mentioning about how fast they rolled this out. She had said that so the FDA basically came in-house with Pfizer, And Pfizer researchers, the auditors, and then the FDA were working side by side to speed the process up. And part of the reason she said that it came out quickly, but one of the reasons why it couldn't come out fast enough was because they couldn't get research groups. I think it was pregnant women and people over the age of 65. They couldn't get children either, to see how it would react, because nobody was wanting to sign off on saying, okay, yeah, try me on this vaccine to see what happens. And it was those three groups that they couldn't get. But looking back on all that, I thought it was really strange. But now the government, and kind of bring this back full circle before we end up for the night, to bring this back full circle, I think that well, I'll just ask it to you guys, and I'll get all three of your all's opinions. How do you think the American people would respond if something similar like that happened again? What do you think the response of the people would be on how they would respond? Shawn Yates, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think the response is going to be very heavily dictated by what comes out of this Dr. Fauci situation with these congressional hearings, and also if we ever find out truly what was the origin of COVID. If it was a lab leak, good luck to getting people to ever trust in the federal government or mandates or any kind of research again, or any international deals. I'm going to say that right now because it's going to be very tough to get people to trust in these things. Whereas if it was something that came from the wild, I feel like it's going to be kind of a similar reaction, but I don't know. It's going to be a little bit more positive, I think. I feel like that's why it truly matters what the origin of COVID was, is because, one, we're going to see either a very negative reaction to people responding to the federal government mandates, or one where they're going to follow, I guess you can call it the science, for lack of a better term. They're going to follow the science as to what we should do to kind of prevent transmission.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Travis, what do you think?
Sorry, I couldn't find a mic button. I agree with a lot of what Shawn just said. I think people are going to be very reluctant, especially, now the government's kind of backtracking and saying, okay, it was a lab leak. Sorry, guys, whatever. I think it would have to be something very severe. Like, it would have to be something where people are literally like falling in the streets, dying, for someone to take that seriously again. Because I think there's just such a black eye to the government. Huge, just big loss of trust there. And I don't want to go off topic here, but
go ahead.
Shawn mentioned something about like
we got 5 minutes.
It's still on topic, but like if it was something that came from the wild, right? Have you guys been seeing those articles about the zombie deer disease?
No. Please share.
I don't know a lot about it, but every time I open my computer, MSN, for whatever reason, that's an article that pops up. That's a new one every day. I have yet to click on one, so I don't know why my news feed keeps popping up with it. But supposedly there's this disease that's spreading through deer right now, and they're calling it like a zombie disease. And basically, from the symptoms I read, it makes a deer like delirious, and like they start acting belligerent, and like it's killing them.
Zombie deer disease, I see it.
They're saying it could transfer to one of the headlines said it could transfer to humans eventually, which whether that happens or not, I don't know, but you see articles like that, and it's like, oh, some conspiracy theorists say, oh, are they planning something, or is it, I don't know, man.
Yeah. That's a little bit.
It would have to be, something to look into. I don't know much about it, but I think it would have to be something very, very serious for people to actually be like, okay, this is real. We should do what we're told, because most people would say fuck the government after that.
Shawn Phillips, what do you think?
No, I'm with you. And Travis, I'm pretty sure I've seen a couple things about that as well. And I think it's like Wisconsin and Illinois is where they're seeing that being an issue.
That's probably why I'm getting the feed for tracking me.
But no, I'm with you guys where a lot of it's going to come down to, I hope this is one of those things that's not quote unquote swept under the rug. I feel like, aside from me stumbling upon an MSN article, it's not real, at least in my life. And I feel like most of the shit that I see is political, where Fauci, at a congressional hearing is in the mainstream right now. And I don't know if it's timed that way for a reason.
It's convenient.
Because I feel like what we found out is that he was not the individual for the job. He handled it very poorly. I think his staff handled it very poorly. I think that I will, credit where credit's due. It was a very odd transitional time for it to happen with Trump leaving office, Biden taking office, for a lot of, the stuff that kind of happened. Although it was hilarious where in a recent interview, Joe Biden took credit for the vaccine, which is hilarious because, the vaccine happened while Trump was still president. So I'm with, I hope this is not one of those things where it is swept under the rug that it was a man-made, engineered in a lab in Wuhan, the virus, because you look at how quick the government was to put mandates on and how wrong they were about so many things. Little things, for example, like, all the people that were hooked up to ventilators, and it was ventilators that was killing a lot of people. When people were originally getting COVID, causing them to get, pneumonia, which is what was a big factor that killed a lot of people that had COVID. So I think if any good can come from it, and it's a double-edged sword because it's part of the reason why property values in the countryside have gone, have skyrocketed. Yes. But it is good where I feel like now, I feel like there's a resurgence for independent, a certain kind of independence that people have. I'm starting to see, and it might just be because it's some of the stuff that interests me, but I am seeing more and more people lean towards, holistic medicine, and not just your typical, like, smoke this dope and it'll make you feel better, but, the kind of rub a little salt on the wound kind of sense of healing again.
Your essential oils.
Yeah, well, not quite the essential oil kind of thing, but I mean, like, people are looking at it from a, hey, I feel like now after COVID, and people are, in my opinion, I am seeing more things where people are more inclined to do things like preventative medicine, meaning like eating better, living a healthier lifestyle, being out more, doing things like that, enjoying the outdoors to prevent things like, some of the long COVID results. Or I feel like people are, at least in my circle, and some of the things that I see is, people are trying to be a little bit more self-sufficient as opposed to being so reliant on things that the government can provide or that a supermarket can provide. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, as someone that, works for the federal government once a month and 2 weeks out of the summer and then on deployments, I take everything that is said with a grain of salt. And we're just going to kind of see how things go. And, next week we might be discussing, the Iowa caucus, and looking forward to seeing who the next leader of our nation is going to be. But today was a great chat, Shawn. It was a pleasure to have you. It always is. You're always welcome to come back and chat it up. We'll definitely kind of steal you. We're all a bunch of old bastards now, so it's good to kind of have someone that's in the heart of the city, living it up as a young man in college. So
we're still trying to get
definitely snag your.
We're still trying to get him
more often than not.
We're still trying to get him to marry off to a sugar mama yet, but I'm always disappointed.
No, see, he's in downtown St. Louis. Well, I have the connection to the sugar daddies. So if you want to get paid, you gotta touch a couple tips, but you'll go on more cruises than you could ever dream about. So
go ahead and give him a shout out. Go ahead and give him a shout out.
Yeah.
What's the name of the place?
God.
Just John. It's the place to be. So I'm sure I can get you set up on a beer cart making $300 a night. So we'll make it easy for you.
It's a trade-off.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming tonight, Shawn. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.
But to our listeners, again, be a friend, tell a friend, Good talking with you boys, and I can't wait to do it again next week.
We'll see y'all.
Nice talking to y'all.
Thank you for listening to the Voice of Reason podcast. Be sure to check out our other content on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok.